Hi everyone, it's Howard Gearhauser alongside my dad, Dr. G. In today's video episode, we are going to talk about ultraviolet light, also called UV light. Now, UV light is something that's often demonized in our mainstream culture. It's something that we associate with sunburn and damage to the eyes and maybe even damage to the skin, like the sun damage. That's all associated normally with UV light. So we want to give a fresh take on UV light because it is a part of our sun, it is a part of nature. So there's probably some important mechanisms and important things to consider when thinking about whether or not you want to incorporate UV light into your life. So Dad, can you just explain a little bit more about what UV light is for those that might be unfamiliar?
All right. The spectrum of light that comes from the sun uh, goes from UV to infrared, and in between the UV and the infrared is the visible light. So at one end, the ultraviolet light, this has the most power. It has the shortest wavelength. And so with light frequencies, the shorter wavelength has more power. And then the other end, the infrared, it has less power. So this more powerful light, research showed that when they artificially made a light bulb that has this, there's UVA and UVB. UVA is the one that causes sunburns. Well, UVB can cause sunburns too, but UVA light is a light that comes from the sun. About 5% of the UV light that hits our outer atmosphere of the earth, about 5% of it gets through the atmosphere. And we talk about the golden hour. The golden hour is the first hour after sunrise because, because of the angle of the sun, the UVA doesn't get through in that first hour. So the golden hour, there's no UV light. But there are things that UVA light does that are critically important. And we want to talk about those today. And we want to talk about maybe considering getting some UVA light exposure. Even though mainstream medicine, I looked at the like American Academy or the big institution of the dermatologists, American Academy of Dermatology, or whatever they're called, and they say no amount of UV light is good. And ophthalmologists often say the same thing, that UV light causes cataracts and that you should wear sunglasses at all time. And I know that most people believe that because I'm out on hiking on trails most days of the week. And I would say 95% of people have big sunglasses on when they're out hiking. So, I think sunglasses are a bad idea. I think it goes against, nature. Humans didn't wear sunglasses for millions of years as they, evolved or were created on the planet. We didn't have built-in sunglasses. We had no sunglasses for millions of years. And now we have sunglasses which block 100% of the UV. If you look at your little thing on your glasses, block 100% of UV. And then the sunscreen, the dermatologists tell us always have sunscreen, always cover your child in sunscreen before they go outside. Is this a good idea?
Yeah, and this sunscreen and sunglasses, recommendation definitely has taken hold within our society. But again, if we just think back to is the sun, which really provides, it's a source of all life on the planet, should we be blocking out important frequencies that are coming from the sun? Now, we talked about in another session how UV light can be more dangerous if you're not exposing your skin and eyes to that golden hour light, which doesn't, which is mainly red light. Can you explain that a little bit more for those who maybe haven't watched that video?
Yes, well, the red light uh, regenerates. Just keep it brief and you can go watch that video where we go into the details of it. The red light regenerates. The blue light, which is closest to the ultraviolet light of the visible light, it goes blue, violet, and then ultraviolet. So ultraviolet means we can't see it. Violet, we can see. So those frequencies have a shorter wavelength and more power. And so when you uh, take a cell and put it in a petri dish and you beam it with the ultraviolet light, it damages the DNA in that light. So that led to what the dermatologists and the ophthalmologists preach. So it's not their fault. It's just the paradigm that's out there that, hey, this stuff causes damage. But when you look at the whole organism, and if you look at balancing light with how the sun has the red, which regenerates, and the blue and the ultraviolet, which breaks down, in balance, you don't get this detrimental effect, or not nearly so. Now, yes, you don't want to go out in midday where the UV light is powerful, but you, just as an example, what good does UV light do? Well, there's a lot of molecules in our body that absorb ultraviolet light. One of the things that's been found recently is ultraviolet light causes a release of nitric oxide in our skin and in our blood vessels. And when nitric oxide is released, it lowers our blood pressure. And so there's many studies that show that people that live closer to the equator or people that are out in the sun more have lower blood pressure and lower risk of cardiovascular disease. This is the number one killer of Americans, is heart attacks. And here's an easy, inexpensive way to reduce your risk of a heart attack and to lower your blood pressure, so you don't have to take a blood pressure medication that might have a bunch of side effects. And some of the blood pressure medications have been shown to not improve mortality. In other words, they lower your blood pressure, but you don't live a minute longer. To me, that's a failure. And so some of the major classes of blood pressure medications don't even make you live longer, even though they lower your blood pressure. So here we find that there's less heart attacks and lower blood pressure in people that get exposed to UV light. What else does UV light do? UV light increases the expression of the p53 gene. The p53 gene leads to pro-opiomelanocortin. Now, that's a long name for a protein that is further cleaved into other things that are beneficial. So pro-opiomelanocortin is cleaved into ACTH, adrenocorticotropic hormone. So adrenocorticotropic hormone stimulates the release of cortisol, which is anti-inflammatory. So that's an anti-inflammatory effect of ultraviolet light. It's also cleaved, this pro-opiomelanocortin is cleaved into melanocyte stimulating hormone, which stimulates our cells to tan, the secretion of melanin. So melanin is a special molecule. There is research out there saying that melanin might make some of our energy. So that's an exciting thing that, we always thought, when I was a kid, when a tan was thought to be good, I remember looking at this, to me as an old guy who's probably 30, look at this old guy with a tan and just going, wow, I want to be like that guy, because he just seems so full of energy. So we've kind of gotten away from that, and we think of tan as something negative, as, oh, that person doesn't know how harmful the sun is. But the tan itself, the melanin, which creates a tan, actually might make energy in and of itself. Now, that's a theory, but there's a lot of research out there, and I'm not going to go into that. I'll talk about that in another video about melanin, how exciting the research is on melanin. But melanin is a free radical scavenger, and melanin acts like an umbrella so that UV light doesn't damage us. So that brings us back to, yes, there are certain skin types that need to be a lot more careful with the ultraviolet light exposure. And those are the people that are as white as a sheet of paper. And whether they go in the sun or not, that doesn't change. Well, yes, those people got to watch the sun. It could harm them because they don't have this umbrella of melanin. So the darker you are, the more sun you can tolerate, and probably the more sun you need. Okay, so melanin, alpha MSH, which stimulates melanin production, our tan, is another thing. Now, the other thing that cleaves off of this pro-opiomelanocortin is beta endorphin, our internal opiate. So we have an opiate. This beta endorphin binds with the mu opioid receptors in our nervous system. What does that do? It decreases pain and it makes us feel good and makes us feel relaxed. It's why people inject heroin into their vein to feel good, to like life again, and they become addicted to heroin. So is our opiate crisis because of an indoor crisis? You know, I believe they're connected, deeply connected. It looks like nature has designed us to be addicted to the sun. And there are studies that show that people that use tanning beds become addicted to tanning beds. And if you take their tanning away from them, they go into withdrawals. Animal studies, same thing. You expose mice to UV light, it causes a release of beta endorphin. And then you take the mice and stop the UV exposure, they go through withdrawals just like heroin. You take a person that has been using a tanning bed or is tanning outdoors, and you inject them with naltrexone, which is the drug that blocks that mu opioid receptor, they will go into withdrawals. So it looks like Mother Nature designed us, or God, or the extreme consciousness, or whatever you believe in is the source of everything, the cosmos. It looks like it was a specific design, and the clues are our opiate crisis, and then people becoming addicted to tanning beds, and people really becoming addicted to tanning. That's probably a good thing in my view. Now, that's an extreme view. It goes against mainstream medicine. And again, you have to use caution. Those people with a really, really fair skin, or as Howard mentioned, if you don't precondition your skin. Another thing is to go slow. Our skin thickens with more sun exposure. So we're designed kind of, if you think of a human being that's living out in nature in a temperate climate where they have cold winters and hot summers, we get this gradual warming in the springtime, gradual increase in sun intensity in the springtime. So our skin gets thicker, it gets the tan, and there's other protective factors. There's a protective factor called the Auger effect, which turns UV light into harmless heat. We also have that mechanism in us. So that's the thing that mainstream hasn't really looked at, is, well, we're designed to be protected from the sun. Now, someone whose ancestors came from a place where the sun rarely showed itself, then they're lucky in a way. I mean, you could call it lucky in that they don't need a lot of sun to get the benefits, but they do need some. Nobody out there should completely hide from the sun like most of our ophthalmologists and dermatologists tell us, that no sun is good. Well, I just told you why. Some sun is critically important. And nature, or God, designed us to even become addicted to the sun. And so what is the opiate response? Reduce pain, to feel happy? That sounds good to me.
And as my dad mentioned too, you'll kind of know how much sun you need based off your skin color and your skin tone. if your ancestry is from, like, let's say Central America or Africa, somewhere closer to the equator, you're going to need a lot more sun. That's why your skin's darker. If you're from Northern Europe, you probably don't need as much. If you're from Ireland, you probably don't need as much. But everyone needs some. If you totally hide from the sun because you want to stay fair skinned, or you're afraid of, sunspots or whatever it might be, that's might impact your health. And with the melanin theory, and again, it's a theory, there's some ideas that the reason why we get sunspots is because that melanin's rising, trying to create more energy for your body, which is breaking down. So that's something to consider too. If you don't go out in the sun, you might be more susceptible to brown spots. So get out in the sun, but do it safe. Don't go outside and get fried. Make sure that you're exposing yourself to that golden hour of sun exposure where there isn't UV light, to make sure your skin's charged up. That way you can tolerate the UV light. Is there anything else you want to add?
No, I think that that covers it. I think that this is one of the things that our modern medical system has really harmed people, is the idea that we need to cover up or wear sunscreen or wear sunglasses. Now, whenever I'm out hiking on the trails, I have no glasses on because I do not want that UV light blocked. Now, I'm extreme, if you know my story, I had like a breakdown and I was able to recover from it. And I believe it was these principles, but that's just me. This is an N=1 experiment. Everyone's different. And so we find this in our health coaching, that everyone is at a different level. And so when your body's broke down, a lot of times you need more sun. And so that's why I go to the extreme. I want to be like that fruit fly that got exposed to light and lives its maximum lifespan. And as it goes to that maximum lifespan, it's younger all the way there. It doesn't live longer, but has a more vigorous, healthy life and doesn't get the complex diseases which can make your life miserable. So the sun, I could go on and on about how there's a lot more of the complex diseases as we go away from the equator, like diabetes, like autoimmune disease, like heart attacks, all like cancer. All these things are, the further we live from the sun, the higher the incidence of those diseases. So I'd say that's another major clue that the sun is not bad. And I feel sick to my stomach when I'm out there on the trail and I see these old people hobbling along the trail completely covered up from the sun. I want to grab them by their shirt and shake them like this and go, see that thing up there? That's what's going to, make you, allow you to give up the cane, Yeah, I see somebody hobbling with a cane and they're covered up like they're on some African safari, and it's like the golden hour, and it's like, you should be naked.
Well, as my
And
dad
then I
mentioned,
see the people with white, they have so much sunscreen caked on their face. And so I know the mime out there is, oh, well, you'll stay beautiful and won't wrinkle if you just coat yourself with sunscreen. Most of the sunscreens have toxic chemicals that destroy reefs in the ocean, and they're going to do the same thing to you, going to destroy you.
yeah, and as my dad mentioned, everyone's different too. So if you want extra help, if you'd like to work with us and allow us to go through everything you're doing with a fine-tooth comb, help you identify what the right amount of sun exposure would be for you based off your ancestry, where you live, kind of your day-to-day routine, we'd be more than happy to help you out. I'll put a link in the description where you can go check out our custom health and wellness plans, and as well as our coaching option, where you'll actually work with me, my dad, and our team of experts to get this stuff dialed in. That's if you want it. If not, make sure you're implementing the free stuff. Take this, go put it into practice, but be smart. Don't feel like you need to go sit outside for 3 hours on your first day. You want to build that sun callus, get that skin thickened up, because over time you'll be able to tolerate more and more sun, the more you stick with it. So we invite you to go try out these recommendations. And again, if you need extra help, go check out that link. Is there anything you want to add before we sign off?
Nope. Happy sun exposure.
Yep, have some fun in the sun. We'll see you on the next video.